Hey guys, welcome to this video. Thanks so much for tuning in, sharing this now moment with myself and with one another. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome. Welcome back if you have. My intention is unity and oneness. I wanted to give a brief, we'll see how brief this is, overview of some of the tools that I've used to help me get through this ascension process and this journey. This is a part two or a part one of two videos that I did, so I'll try to include both links in these videos. But as I was doing my previous video, I realized it would be helpful just to go through and break some of these down as tools for our toolbox. So my intention with this video is to offer tools that have helped me, because our tools, as we expand this ascension journey, also need to expand to help support what's happening inside of us and all around us. So if our toolbox is getting bigger, or the box is growing that we live within, or the reality structure is changing, we're going to need more tools in order to help us continue to build this new reality. And so what happens is, I'm hearing it's conflicting at times because we're not used to experiencing some of the things we're experiencing. We're not used to feeling some of the things that we're feeling. And there's a lot of reasons that we're going through this, which I might include at the end. So let's just go through the basics. And if I have time, I'll kind of weave in and out of why these tools can be helpful or why we might be going through what we're going through. So I just want to back up and share briefly this. None of this is in a medical advice, and it's not guaranteed to work. It's just options to have available to us to consider if some of the things that we've been doing haven't been working, or to add to things that already have been working for us. And some of these things you might have already been there, done that. I actually do a myriad of things. I teach Pilates, yoga, breath work, meditation, grounding exercises, movement, intuitive movement. I'm an energy healer, Reiki master, channeler, and I do sound healing as well, through not only sound healing, but light language. And so I like to use all of these things as a tool, as my toolbox, to assist others on their journey, and also myself on this journey. If I wasn't able to acclimate and integrate to the changes that were happening in my world, I wouldn't be able to be sitting here right now offering some of these tools. Most of the things I've learned has been experiential. So I've actually experienced and gone through certain things, I feel, in order to bridge together um, certain modalities, ideas, concepts, and just offer some tools that whoever comes into contact with my channel or myself may be able to be provided with something to take with them on their journey. And so I'm going to cover some of those topics here. But the the topic I want to talk about was nervous energy. A lot of us are picking up again on these incoming fluctuations, on mass moments where we're having these waves of emotion, thought patterns, changes in the earth, realizations. And so everything is energy. And so what's happening is a lot of us have nervous energy stuck in our bodies or moving through our bodies, and we're either not aware of it, we're not sure what to do with it, or we're not using that energy to the best of our ability because it's stuck or because we're not aware of it. One of the biggest messages my guides say continuously is the more aware we become of what's happening in our bodies and around us, the more our perspective changes about all of that, and the more balanced we become in how we interact with reality. Therefore, the more balanced that reality becomes, since we are creating our reality. And that's just a very brief overview of what they've been saying for years. So becoming aware of the physical template, the temple that harnesses this soul shard, or whatever we wish to call it, this piece of light that is connected to that which animates all things. I could go on and on. Spirit that moves through all things. I like to compare it to a tree or a seed with all of these beautiful roots and fibers like mycelium, that we're just growing new branches. And sometimes there's growing pains when you grow new branches. And we're also, some of the old ones are, I'm seeing falling leaves. They're falling off and then they get reabsorbed back into the soil, so on and so forth. So our bodies are going through changes. Our DNA is changing and we're having responses not only to what's happening internally, but also our external environment. So how can we go through this and move this nervous energy? Because one of the messages that comes through is, I'm being called to play with this briefly. The first thing I'm going to play with very briefly, what's the nervous system? Nervous energy is connected to the nervous system. This is just a quick AI overview, and this is just very brief. The body's main communication network, that's key right there, consisting of the brain, spinal cord, and an extensive network of nerves. It functions by sending and receiving messages throughout the body, controlling thoughts, movements, and basic functions like breathing and heart rate, as well as processing sensory information from the environment. The system is divided into the central nervous system, which includes the brain. Okay, we won't go into all of that, but I really want to talk about this in general because the key is the communication. If the nervous system is in charge essentially of controls everything, basically. But if we're nervous, and I'm going to go to breathing as the first thing to talk about here, we're going to process the information in a certain way that's coming from our environment. And if we're nervous and we're anxious and we're in a place of fear, how do we think that that energy is going to be interpreted in our bodies and therefore projected as thoughts outwardly? So we have a whole group or collective of humans, from my perspective or from one perspective, that are not A, in their bodies, B, they're not connecting their thoughts to their breathing. Their senses are overloaded, overstimulated through all kinds of reasons I won't get into. And we're on sensory overload. This blocks up certain channels. We've been exercising one muscle, but not others. So we're kind of out of balance and we're remembering how to come back into balance and come back into alignment. Some of us. Others are shutting down. Others are responding only from fear, which is heightened fight or flight response or raised cortisol in the body, and are becoming very reactionary. They react to everything. They jump at everything. It's nervous energy. And they're sensitive. Why did you say that? What's going on? It becomes like a paranoia almost. And this is just one aspect of what happens when we do not learn to allow in open communication. It's ironic because let's think about what's happening around the world. Everybody's talking about freedom of communication, right? Well, if we're blocking ourselves from freely communicating, our brain is not communicating with our gut fully. Our gut is telling our brain something that's not necessarily true because it's full of parasites. So I could go on and on to the different applications of what this means and what this looks like, but we're just going to try to keep it simple here. So this means control and regulation, breathing, heart rate, digestion, balance, as well as higher level cognitive functions, thinking, learning, and memory. I could go into a whole video based just on that. And if we're disconnected, the way in which we remember things happening, we're going to associate with things that aren't necessarily 100% accurate because we're reading the field from a particular perspective. I just went into this. And we're interpreting it through a peppered lens is what I'm hearing. So we'll come back to this. So sometimes we feel like we have a lot of energy, but we're really tired. Sometimes we're really tired and we want to sleep all the time. We might not be able to sleep. We might have irregular heartbeat. We might have electrical stimuli going through our body. We might feel anxious. We might feel unable to focus, right? Or we might feel hyper focused and we can't get off of that because it would throw out our entire nervous system. Our eyes might be having trouble focusing. So these are all just different symptoms, if you want to call it that, of I'm hearing the word hyperactivity or inactivity. So it's different. The way it manifests is different for every body. Every body is different. But the tools I'm going to be giving are for everybody. And you might use one, you might use none, you might use all. And again, I'm a huge proponent of we're going to start with breathing. So I'm not going to go into every detail. I'm just trying to cover all this. But just briefly, I always share with my clients, especially if we're doing yoga or meditation as a for instance, I don't care how you're breathing. As long as you are breathing and you're allowing the fullness of the breath to move through the body. So oftentimes when I'm working with someone, they'll tell me that they have trouble relaxing. And then we drop into a basic meditation or a basic communication with the body, and I see or feel in through them that they're holding their breath. And we tend to hold our breath in anticipation of good, of bad, of whatever. Think of a scary movie. Something's going to happen. I don't know. I don't want to look. Speaking of a little bug in here. And so what happens is when we have nervousness and our nervous system is going through something, oftentimes in response, like a fight or flight response, we hold our breath, right? Oftentimes that's how you stay away from predators. You don't want them to hear you breathing. I mean, it goes back to very basic things, but it's not that we're not breathing. Clearly you wouldn't be watching this if you weren't. But it's that we're blocking ourselves and shutting it down at such a slow response that our body is essentially going into fight or flight because we're not breathing. So it's like, what came first, the chicken or the egg, right? The external stimuli that caused us to hold our breath. Is it a habit since we were kids? Is it a pattern from watching television? Who knows? Another one of the messages is sometimes it doesn't matter why, just recognizing that it is. It's something that we're doing. Later on, we might ask the question and the answer might come. Having all the answers doesn't necessarily mean, though, that it makes things better, by the way, and that's a whole other video. So, am I breathing? Am I holding my breath? Is my breathing coming in, recognizing that throughout the day is the first tool from my perspective. And we might recognize there's a lot of techniques from the tool that I like to use is just breathe. Wow, how do I feel right now? Where am I feeling right now? Am I feeling numb? Am I feeling anxious? All right, Carrie, just breathe. So breathe in for 5 counts, breathe out for 5 counts for 2 minutes. That's a good way or a good tool. Again, we're expanding our toolbox since what we're going through feels bigger. So we got to find more tools to help us. So breathe bigger, breathe more often. Notice how often we're not breathing. Notice in what situations we're holding our breath. Are we hyperventilating over things? So the 5 counts in, the 5 counts out, even, is a great tool to use to just get into a space of coherence. They use that in heart math. And in heart math, they add the visualization or the feeling of going into the heart, and we'll go into that later, and into a place of gratitude. I'm just suggesting for the first part, just breathe. So then once you acknowledge and recognize if you're breathing, if you're holding your breath, if you're nervous, if you're tense, you can start to invite yourself to breathe into parts of the body. I'll sometimes say, okay, I'm just going to breathe in. Am I breathing into my chest first or my belly first? Can I play with that a little bit? Is my rib cage expanding? Can I breathe into the back of my body? Can I breathe into the front of my body? Can I breathe into both at the same time? What would it feel like if I could breathe into the crown of my head? What if I was breathing up through the soles of my feet? Can I breathe through my hands? And these are all just practices to utilize as techniques to get us out of our heads. Sometimes it's not just about the breathing. So my guides always say when I teach raw, recognize, acknowledge, it's not always about it's not a technique, it's breathing. It's just that breaking the cycle. You break the pattern. When you shift your energy and focus from what's going on out there to not paying attention to saying, oh, wait, I'm feeling dizzy. I should probably breathe. Oh, I forgot to write down electrolytes. I'll have to add that. Electrolytes and water. Okay. So, because that's important too right now. And so once we just say, I've been holding my breath, you're now telling your body that you're paying attention to it. You're connecting your brain, which is always connected, but you're connecting your thoughts to your lungs, right? To the air that's moving in and out of your body, which means you are now experiencing being in your body. Whereas before you weren't remembering it because you weren't experiencing it because you were in your head. And I'm not saying you, I'm just saying as an example, we'll just say we. So when we acknowledge and recognize, we change the frequency immediately. And that in itself can reset the pattern, especially if we're doing it over and over and over again. So now rather than being unconscious about it, we're being conscious about it, which puts us back in the driver's seat a bit more than us just going throughout our day feeling like we're being pulled in so many directions. At least we can control our breathing. Okay. I also want to point out that if someone is having trouble breathing, if you're having trouble breathing and you're having pain radiating down the left side of your body or just tightness in the chest or you're super dizzy, I'm a big fan of going to the doctor. Now, I'm not saying, because again, this is not a medical, this is not medical advice. I'm not a doctor. I'm not offering medical advice, nor am I saying you should follow any of this instead of that. This is just an addition to your toolbox. And also, there's no guarantees that any of this is going to work. Every person is different, but it's helpful. Sometimes it can have extremely powerful, positive responses in the body. But you might, if you go to the doctor and the doctor says you're perfectly fine, sometimes that can actually help you breathe easier because you realize, oh, I'm just stressed. I'm having an anxiety attack. An anxiety attack can be very detrimental to the body if that's happening over and over and over again. You're raising that cortisol, you're in fight or flight, your brain is not getting enough oxygen, your blood is not getting enough oxygen, lowers your immune system, causes more anxiety, and it's this never-ending cycle. So while there may be, you might go to the doctor and the doctor might say you're perfectly healthy, that might cause somebody to go, oh, okay, good, because I just felt like something was wrong, but maybe I'm okay. It also can have the opposite effect, and I know because of me, I went through a Kundalini activation, and we're going to talk a little bit about that too. This might be a 3-part video, I don't know. And the doctor said, you're fine, and I was like, no, I'm not. I'm not fine. So then you think okay, clearly I'm going crazy or I've got something really bad wrong with me that they haven't figured out. We got to do more tests. So I am saying do your due diligence because if you go to the doctor and the doctor says, hey, guess what? You have a lung infection. You never would have known that had you have not gone to the doctor. And that could have led to a lot of other things down the road happening that could have been prevented. So a lot of this is preventative as well, not necessarily diagnostic. Or you might discover that you have a heart issue and that the heart palpitations you're having is because of an irregular heartbeat, and you may need to address that. It might be that you are recognizing that there's a pattern with hormones or thyroid. So I could go on and on, but it always is beneficial to have that as a resource oftentimes. And it can be a naturopath. It could be that you speak to your nutritionist, but it's getting a perspective from a professional. I feel it can be very helpful. I also will add to that, I always recommend getting a second perspective so that you can compare on contrast. Just because someone tells you something doesn't always mean it's true. So this is where being our own advocate and using discernment is also important. I'm going to lead that back to the nervous energy. This is all about knowing ourselves. Know thyself. If you are listening to someone and they're telling you all this and it doesn't feel right, get a second opinion because they're human too. Oftentimes, unless you're getting this, especially if you're getting your information off of AI. That's a whole other can of worms. All right. So breathing, take a breath class. Use a tool. There's tools that you can use to increase the length of your breathing. If you're very nervous, I like to breathe in and then double my exhale. So if you're having short breaths, I'll do 3 inhale, out 6 or 7. Right? And there's so many different more techniques. Those are just the easiest tools. Read a book on it. Go online, try some. I follow some people on YouTube channels and I've sent those videos to clients of mine. I can't do it better than they can. Here you go. They'll give you a tool. You follow the 5 counts in, you follow the 5 counts out. Heart Math has it all set up for you. So it's very user-friendly. So the Love Tuner is a tool. It's a whistle that you can breathe in and out of that vibrates through the body and helps to increase the exhale and the inhale, and it's just good for you all around. There's silent ones, or you could just flip it around. I actually bought the whistle for someone and they said it was too loud. Well, you could turn it around and just not use the sound. So try something different, tweak things a little bit. If it doesn't work for you, try something else. They have silent ones where there's no sound and it just reminds you to breathe. You can wear it around your neck, you can hang it from your car, whatever works for you. But I do love the Love Tuner. I use it quite frequently. I like the way I feel when I'm done using it. And that one has like a harmonica is what it sounds like. And our bodies are made of, I don't know if you know this, bone. And bones are crystals. So what happens if you've had sound healing or you play a crystal bowl? It vibrates. It makes a sound and a frequency. And so this is where music can be very helpful. Humming, and I'm kind of going all over the place here, but humming. So back to the breath, maybe inhaling. Oh, hum. Why does that feel good? It's not woo-woo, it's science. And so it's our biology. Our bodies are tuning forks. They're tuning instruments. We attune to in some cases, our environment. So that's another can of worms. If we have a lot of nervous energy, a suggestion might be to not put ourselves continually over and over again in environments that create more nervous energy. Now, obviously, if it's a job that you have to go to every day, that's another conversation. But I'm talking about huge public places. You know, there's certain grocery stores that have better energy than other grocery stores. Anyways, so the Love Tuner can help with that. I keep it in my car and I use it when I'm driving. Whenever I'm feeling anxious about connecting with someone or going into a grocery store, I'll use it before I go in, and it helps to balance out my nervous system through sound. And again, maybe I'll do another video on how that works. I'm not going to go on how that works or why it works. It just does. Yoga means to yoke, right? So to become one. So you're creating this oneness in the body, mind, soul, kind of spiritual, all of that. Yoga is a classical way to bring harmony to the nervous system. It isn't just about the poses. So when you're doing yoga the right way, you're using all of your senses. And I'm not going to say it's wrong if you're not, so I'll rephrase that. When you're really in flow in yoga, everything just comes together. You are focusing so much on the movements and how it feels, and you're using symbolism and words in Sanskrit that have a frequency and a vibration that represents things. And you get out of your head about maybe the program you just watched or the news that you just received, and you're dropping into something else. And when you do that and you're doing it in full flow, you're syncing the left hemispheres and right hemisphere of the brain. You're allowing yourself to breathe. Oftentimes the teacher will ask you, are you breathing? Oh yeah, because we can hold our breath in yoga too, because it's a habit, it's a pattern. Um, and you are essentially grounding, you're connecting with the earth, you're opening up and opening the body into, which changes the state, changes the frequency. One of the things I didn't really mention, a lot of this, when you have nervous energy, it's about movement. And I'm going to go back to that because I know a lot of people will say, well, but isn't meditation equally important? Yes, it is. Non-movement, being still. So I'll come back to that in just a moment. So yoga, through the movement and through the particular poses, helps to align and balance the nervous system. And usually it's associated with meditation, breath work, sound, and mantras, things like that. So it doesn't have to be complicated. I'm already hearing people say, well, I'm not flexible. I can't do yoga. My knees hurt too bad. My wrists hurt too bad. I get it all when I'm working with someone. Oftentimes, I find myself working with clients. Let's say I met someone online as a client, and they may not exercise really. I have to share that sometimes I'll get messages, you need to move more, because that energy that's inside is stagnant, they're stuck, and they don't know why. And I'll feel where it's stuck, and it can just be a simple set of 3 or 4 exercises, breath work, or poses that they could do that would facilitate a huge shift in their body. So give it a try. If you've done it before and it didn't work, try it again, because you may have done it 5 years ago and you're not the same person now. And I've also been told many times, oh, I've done yoga, it doesn't work for me. All right, I don't like yoga. Well, part of it may be because you didn't necessarily connect with the right instructor. There's so many different branches of yoga. So find one that works for you. It might be hatha yoga. That's my background, which kind of encompasses it's just movement. But it might be you want hot yoga because you need that heat to detox. It might be that you don't need hot yoga. And I will give a fair warning. Many people I've met over the years have hurt themselves in hot yoga. So just be aware. And again, it's about being present in your body. Sometimes it feels so good to stretch, and then we're like, uh-oh, I do it still as an instructor. So if I slow down and I recognize I've reached my limit, right? Don't go past it. So just hold it and allow your body to lead you intuitively and where it needs to go. And that's another can of worms. But a couple of basic yoga poses I'm going to just offer briefly that are my favorite. And I might do some videos at some point. Legs up the wall. Most people can do this. You lay down on the floor and you put your legs straight up the wall. You can use a pillow under your bum to give you a little more lift. If you have a tight back, you can keep the knees softly bent. You can even lay flat on the floor and put your legs up on a chair with a slight bend on the knees. Hold that for a few minutes and breathe. That is one of the best poses that you can do to help regulate the nervous system, to help drop you into your body, to help everything settle instead of being on this high anxiety. And sometimes that might need to be accompanied with music. I have a lot of people that say, well, I can't relax or I can't. Well, first of all, I would invite you to cancel, clear, delete that statement and belief system, and start to ask, what would it look like if I could relax my body? What would be some things that feel like they might be relaxing? what are some things I do to help relax? And I know I've been told this before. Well, I sit down and I watch the news. I watch TV. Well, that's another video. I'm suggesting to try something different that you don't usually do because clearly your body is telling you you need something else, potentially. Or suggesting it. I'm not telling you to do that. So, legs up the wall. Another one that's a very simple are mudra. Well, mudras. Yeah, I would say affirmations and mantras can be very powerful too, but also mudras. So even just Anjali Mudra, just taking your thumb and your pointing finger and sitting with your palms in your lap and noticing how that feels. Playing, moving hand, like doing this. So these are some of the other tools. I know I kind of bounced around from yoga, but I do this a lot to kind of brush off some of that residual energy, to move it around in my body, pulling it down, right? This kind of goes with tapping and energy healing, which I'll get to in more detail there. Laying on your back and hugging your knees into your chest. Happy baby. Opening up the hips is a great way to get that settled. Obviously, things like downward dog. If you have wrist issues, child's pose. So in child's pose, you'll come to kneeling, hands and knees. I would suggest knees go wide, draw the heart down towards the floor, expand the arms out in front of you, and just let your back straighten and lengthen with the knees bent on the ground. Push your buns back towards your heels. Look it up, child's pose. And again, if your knees are cranky, you could do downward dog. If your wrists and knees are cranky, roll on over and hug your knees into your chest and just do a little rock for happy baby. Or legs up the wall. So those are just very simple techniques that almost anyone can do. And doing it regularly is important as well. So with the breath work, so when you're doing poses, when you're doing exercises, get into the breathing. Even Pilates is huge on breathing. And I really didn't put Pilates in here, but that is a really great tool to help regulate your nervous system because you're touching, it's kinesthetic, you're feeling, you're moving, you're pressing against something. You have this muscle response. I'm hearing tensity. So it's like you're recognizing the tension in the springs, and it helps you to release tension from your body. It's a really very useful, I love Pilates. So the Love Tuner, I'm going to come back to this in a minute. Heart Math is a great tool. I always provide the link on my description below the videos. Heartmath.org, I believe. You can order, I guess it's an app now. I have the old machines that you link up to your ear. I won't go into all of it. You do breathing and you do practice gratitude, feeling in the heart. So why is this so important? Well, I did a video on beautiful minds. So many people have these beautiful minds, but they're not in their bodies. And so we do things through disassociation. We're not recognizing that we're human, and that doesn't really feel good to do some of these things that people are doing because the irony is we teach in yoga unattachment, but that's a different type of unattachment. You want to be attached to your body. And the irony is that they teach in some teachings, well, we are not the body, right? Don't become so attached to the body. Well, literally we are here on this earth, literally inside of our body. So we're kind of attached to it whether we want to be or not. So we're got to get back to reality, which is we need both in order to get through this reality. You could just hook yourself up to a machine, and maybe some people want to do that and not be in their bodies. But most likely that's not why you're here on the planet Earth. We're here to experience through all of our senses. And that's another video because more senses are opening, which makes this nervous energy even stronger at times, which I'll get to in another video. So heart math is a really great tool because when you practice gratitude, and you don't have to do it through heart math, you can do it through yoga in Shavasana. It gives you visualization. You're feeling in your body, literally the feeling of appreciation and gratitude for yourself, for your body, for those around you. And it sends out, I drew this human because we're not just in, that actually is physical, but it sends out this wave through the etheric, through the mental body, through the emotional body, through the thoughts that are energetically floating all around us. And I always use an example of, do you ever go someplace and you feel yucky when you leave? Sometimes it's because we're picking up through the field that we're all embedded through the wave patterns, aka negative thoughts that create wave patterns, disturbances that interact with us physically, but it's happening non-physically, and we're physically responding to the non-physical. So that's not woo-woo, it's just science. So I keep saying that because it's important to start bridging together. Just because we can't see it kind of thing doesn't mean it's not real. Just because it's not something we can answer definitively doesn't mean it's not real. So again, we're trying to bridge the body, the mind, the heart, all of it together and become a working unit and a collective unification of humans who are all going through this journey, if we can do it in a more hospitable way. And that's a play on words. Maybe I'll get to later. So heart math helps to regulate the nervous system. And anything you can do with fascia. I could do a whole video on fascia. So I said I was going to do a few plugs for people that have helped me or that I've seen are helping others. So there's a person I follow, Dr. Christine. She talks all about fascia. I'll have to try to come back in and add the links here. So if you watch this video and the links aren't there yet, come back in a few days. I'll add it as I go, maybe this weekend. Okay, you're probably going to watch this weekend, so next week. I'll try to provide those links on Instagram. I wrote my friend Jess Maitri's name up here, and Yothera method. She is a dear sister and friend of mine who I actually met from doing this work. So we work together, and then since we've become near and dear friends. And she has her own modality that she's created called the Yothera method. And the reason I'm bringing her into this, because some people are looking for tools to really dive into because they're looking for a life change. And she's offering this. I know others are too. I don't really know all of them, but I can speak for her because she is a genuinely talented and in her heart individual, but also she's a huge proponent of embodiment. And she talks about intuition in the body and such. But the reason I'm bringing her method up and others like her, which we're starting to see a lot more bridging of all of these techniques. I bridge everything I've learned and I put it all in my toolbox, and she does the same thing. She's also a counselor, so she uses therapy as part of her tool for the embodiment. So if you're looking to change your career and maybe become a yoga instructor, she's actually doing a facilitator training coming up at the end of this month. So hopefully I'll post this sooner. I think it's like the 23rd through the 27th are signups. So I'd reach out to her if you're interested, ask her any questions. I'll provide her links. But she combines a lot of this in her practice. And I love that because brain spotting is something else I put on here. She's introduced me to. I didn't realize, and a lot of us already do it on our own, but she uses brain spotting as a tool to kind of figure out or to feel into or to interpret some of the messages that we're receiving, or how to move that nervous energy or where it's coming from, and to retrieve, remember, or get our own answers. So part of the reason I'm sharing all these videos is not just to say this is what works for me, so you can connect the dots, so to speak, and get your own answers. And all of this does is it opens everything up so that that nervous energy or anything the communication enhances. So the channels are connected. We're not always going, I wonder, I wonder, I wonder. All of a sudden it's aha. because we took the time to breathe, and all of our body needed us to just get out of fight or flight so all the dots could connect. And brain spotting is another technique or tool. I would encourage you to look that up. I'll just give this link and then you guys can follow from there. It's eye movement. And so oftentimes, if you notice you have a lot of nervous energy or you're around someone that's really nervous, do you notice that their eyes are like all over the place? They can't focus. For me, I actually go through that sometimes if I'm getting download. Like if I'm having all this activation going on in my brain, I'm like, I can't stop blinking. I'm looking all around and I just let it happen. I think there's an eye movement technique. I don't remember what it's called. Maybe it's EDMR. Am I saying that right? That's something that's worked for a lot of people. I personally can't say because I haven't used it, so I don't have it written on here. I know some people swear by it. I will share, I have had clients that have not, it has not worked for them in a positive way. I want to touch briefly on this, not brain spotting, but EMDR. Let me just make sure I'm calling that right. Okay, I am being called to touch on this briefly. So again, what works for someone else may not work for everyone. The brain spotting is a more gentle. I think it's more gentle than taking you back sometimes to the moment of the trauma. I think that's what EMDR does. But there's another one where it's rapid eye movement, right? So you guys can put in the comments what they're called, and maybe I'm doing a disservice to them because I don't really know much about them. But I have had clients that have it has caused them to go backwards, which sometimes is okay because we need to go back into that pain and we need to go back into that trauma sometimes to relive it, to heal it in our body, to integrate it. I don't necessarily, from my own personal journey, feel that that's necessary for everyone. Every body is different. So if it works for you, great. Sometimes that's what we need. I felt like the brain spotting was more gentle. So I would encourage you to check her out. And again, I'll include her link. And then I think she also links up with other people if you, and she does just the brain spotting as well. Now I'm bringing that up because I feel that not one of these things is necessarily the only answer. And so let's go back to fascia. The fascia, you could look up fascia. I'm going to call just brief. Before I move off the topic of the nervous system, I just want to share that nerve cells or neurons in the nervous system transmit messages as electrical impulses. And I'd written that we might be feeling kind of electric with these electrical impulses. I get those a lot. These signals travel along nerve fibers, insulating the fibers to ensure fast and accurate signal transmission. They're talking about the myelin. When a signal reaches the end of a neuron, it crosses a synapse, a small gap, where chemical messengers transfer the signal to the next neuron. The process allows for rapid communication and coordinated responses throughout the entire body. Anybody feel uncoordinated lately? Me. So sometimes when our energetic, it throws off our balance. So some of us are feeling off balance, dizzy, and that could be because we're not breathing. It could be because we're not, certain things are coming up in our body to be addressed. So I also want to talk about that in reference to fascia. So from my perspective, anything that you do with fascia is a good thing. So let me rephrase that. Anything that you use to work with fascia in a positive way is a good thing. Fascia covers, I think it covers the entire body, if I'm not mistaken. Not like the skin. Skin obviously covers the entire body, but it's like the skin inside the body. And it is myofascial release, which many massage therapists can do it, is good. Fascial stretching is really good. So there's myofascial stretch. There's a company out of Arizona that is incredible. Again, I have to remember to add that link, but you could probably Google it or look it up, search it. But if you think of the nervous, and again, I'm probably butchering some of this, but I'm just going to give a quick, I really kind of liked the AI overview. And I think I'm going to just read here briefly. I like stat pearls, but we'll do kind of mainstream Hopkins medical. And it says it's a thin casing of connective tissue that surrounds and holds every organ, blood vessel, bone, nerve, fiber, and muscle in place. The tissue does more than provide internal structure. Fascia has nerves that make it almost as sensitive as skin. When stressed, it tightens up. So often, have you ever gone, I didn't write down chiropractic, but chiropractic can be helpful. But if you go to the chiropractor and your back keeps going out, most likely it's it's muscle or fascia that's causing that. It's pulling on it. And it's from patterns, repeat patterns, and so on and so forth, tightness. So anything you can do to increase the fascial, take the stress off the fascia, is going to help the nervous system function better. That's just the easiest way I can say that. Also, recognizing hydration is really important to help the nervous system balance as well. We need the water and the fluids. Otherwise, it's like a sponge, right? And I'm playing with this because the guides have said yes, and too much information. I might be giving too much information in this video, but that constant need to keep going, scrolling, right? Scroll, 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 feed, feed, feed. We're a sponge. Our sponge is dry, and we aren't hydrating it to be able to absorb that information. So if I'm being called to talk about this, if we're constantly going online to look up what's going on in the world and we're feeding, 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 we're drying things out, we're not moving, we're hyper focused. What happens is they're using it as like an analogy for comparing that to fascia. You're not going to absorb it. And then when it comes time to take a test or to actually get the information that can be helpful to learn something, we don't have room for it. It kind of goes back to what I was saying. Well, even breathing. If we're tight, we don't have the room or the space to reach that full capacity. And that, in a nutshell, is what's happening to a lot of us metaphorically. So we want to make room and grow and not continually be rigid and tight. So fascia is key to all of this. Cranial sacral therapy, my favorite. Cranial sacral therapy is amazing. I learned about it. If you guys ever heard, well, it doesn't matter. Upledger Institute is a great place to look at online. Google cranial sacral. I like to look at the massage therapist. If I'm going to go specifically for cranial sacral, you can go on their website and see how, for the people that are registered on the website, which if they've gone through it, you want to be registered, because it helps more people find you that want to do cranial sacral. But if you're a massage therapist, that's something you can take, I think, for continuing education credits. Oh, speaking of, if you're a therapist, Jess's Yothera method also, I think, has continuing education credits as well. I think maybe if you're a yoga teacher already also, but don't quote me on that. Sorry, Jess. She can answer all those questions, so you can reach out to her. But I'm going to combine those. So when I went through my yoga teacher training, for me, it was also recommended that I become a yoga therapist. And then I ran into Jess, and it's like, here we go. So combining all of this is so powerful. Yoga is what changed my life, what opened me up into the higher realms of intuition and things like that. So it started for me with yoga, and it started when I was a kid, but really yoga was it for me. It just started to be that combination lock that things started to click into place. Also cranial sacral. The brain spotting was really fun too. Actually, all of this. But the cranial sacral did something physically, changed my physical experience, because I feel strongly that that's part of what helped open my pineal gland, and that's a whole other can of worms. But that is an incredible tool to balance your nervous system. So, energy healing Reiki can also be very powerful. I will also say, though, it can have the similar effect as what did I say earlier with the rapid eye movement or going back to the trauma? When you're doing any kind, and cranial sacral can too, so you might need several sessions, is what I'm trying to say. If you have something happen because you try one of these things and it's like, whoa, that really took me down into my past, and because sometimes you can have something that's called an somatic emotional response, I think. You can go back. I actually worked with someone doing energy work one time, not even, I mean, energy work. And the person went back to all of the traumas that they'd had in their body because the session was so powerful. And that was it. They were like, I don't ever want to do this again. I'm like, you might need to see a therapist. So combine. I feel that sometimes this opens up a can of worms, right? So don't be surprised as you're going through this work that other things start to come up. They're supposed to. So I get what I'm hearing is be careful what you ask for, but it's not be careful what you ask for, it's asking you shall receive. So if you're looking for healing, if you go through all these routes, inevitably something is going to shift. It may not be what you were hoping for. It may not be what you thought it would be. So be open, because Reiki, energy work, cranial sacral can open up the chakras, cellular memory, and then all of a sudden we might remember a childhood trauma that we'd forgotten, or our body all of a sudden heals by re-experiencing all of the surgeries that we've had over our lifetime. Somatic emotional release, I think is what it's called. Somatic emotional release. I'm not a cranial sacral therapist, by the way. I'm just sharing what has happened. So this is another sidebar, but from my perspective, what happened for me is by going and doing a lot of these things, every one of these activated something in me. Even I worked with the medium, Jody. I will have to provide her link. Jody was, I worked with her in a session, and because we were working together, it activated me. And now I'm tuning in to people on the other side. So thank you, Jody, for that. And I didn't necessarily realize that that would be what would happen. But when I projected my consciousness there, I recognized and acknowledged what it was that she did and she was feeling and experiencing. We had a shared experience. And that is what we're doing. Some of this nervous energy is because we're having this shared experience and we're all activating each other. I'm getting goosebumps. So sometimes it's not just about you or me, it's about we. So for me, she was coming to me to connect, and yet she opened something inside of me, and that's what we're all doing, and vice versa. So I need to share her link on here. Meant to stimulate the vagus nerve. The one that, let me just find out the name of this one. I will come back to that. I'm just waiting on some information on one particular brand that I know does work. But look into it, do your research, do your due diligence, see what other people have recommended. This is like the tip of the iceberg. So also Qigong, Tai Chi. So Qigong, I feel, is one of the best because I hadn't done Qigong, and then I took a class and realized that my intuitive movements, or my moving intuition that I thought I created, and this is another kind of fun little aha, was just part of my DNA, part of what I've done lifetime after lifetime, part of what was activated through the yoga. I was doing these movements I'd never done before. I was like, how am I getting myself into these crazy poses that I didn't even know were a thing. And then Qigong combines the sound, the humming, which stimulates the bones and the nervous system, the vagal nerve, the tapping, which breaks up stagnant energy, the all of it, the movement. It allows you to ground, to create strength, to drop into your body, and to get out of your head. So it's a very powerful tool. I highly recommend it. Just tapping can be a really powerful tool. There's actually, and I haven't tried that program, but I think there's a tapping program. There's a name for it if you guys want to share that in the comments with each other. Thank you for that. That would be great. But again, tip of the iceberg, these are some of the things I've used, not all of the things I've used. I'm sure I'm forgetting a bunch. I might add as I go. When I get this vagus nerve device that a friend of mine actually recommended, I will share that in the links. They created that device, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago, and it had to be like FDA approved and all this. But now there's all kinds of devices available that you can get online. This one I know has gone through the ropes because they were FDA approved and you had to get a prescription for it. So I'm sharing that. Okay, so I'm just going to end with a little bit of the woo and just some gentle reminders. And then I'll do another video because I think this is enough. We are essentially what I was being shown. Overstimulation is, I really just want to kind of say, we are being overly stimulated. Not to mention our sensory system is opening up even more. So if we're not managing that, we can easily become overwhelmed, over anxious, and fried. I would invite everyone to really tune in and ask yourself, is this what I need right now? So your body might tell you no. Like you might want to go get Reiki for an instance, and your body might be like, no, that's not what you need right now. Right now, you need to go swimming. You need to go for a run. And I want to add that exercise, go for a swim, jump in the ocean, or I forgot to cover that. Nature, animals, I got to add in here babies, grounding, water, food, sun. Obviously, if they're your babies, don't just randomly ask to hold a baby. Although you could volunteer to hold babies. That's a whole other can of worms. Doing something for somebody else can help you relax the nervous system, depending on how you respond to it. So that's important. If you're already stretched and you're already anxious, and then you're going to go volunteer at a homeless shelter that's going to make you feel more anxious or worse because you're really not able to do anything about it other than be there to feed. It's your interpretation of it. That's key, is my point. If you interpret it as a powerful thing and you're helping, you're giving back, and that helps make you feel better, that's different. But if you're doing something because you feel like you should, but it doesn't make you feel better, now is not the time to continue those actions. It's time to try something different. So it might be that you can go volunteer and hold babies in the hospital or something. So electrolytes, water, swimming, grounding, food, sun, animals. I'm going to do a separate video on that. Those are all just basics. Volunteer in animal shelter, foster a dog or a kitten or a cat. Play with your animals, right? Go to the park, go to the beach, go to the mountains, go for a walk, go for a hike, go for a jog. It's not just about being out in nature, it's noticing nature. So again, it's recognize and acknowledge. Somebody can be in a beautiful place and be on their phone the whole time and not recognize what's around them. So getting you out of your head and into, I'm breathing right now. Wow, this air smells amazing. Wow, this tree feels so barky. This grass is so soft. The water is so cold. Touch, feel, hear, smell, listen. The birds sound beautiful. Those are the things we need to help balance and counterbalance the white noise that's coming in from the electrical network that we're all interacting with all day long. Earbuds, phones, towers, um, social media, all of it. Grounding, watch the grounding movie. You could use a grounding mat. I don't have a particular company that I recommend, but you still want to make sure it works. So maybe get one with good reviews. If you guys have a suggestion, go for it. You can put it in the comments. But I have a grounding mat that I use under my desk. Barefoot on the grass, in the dirt, and the sand. Look it up. It's science. Our bodies are electrical. The earth has electrical energy, but it's like positive and negative, right? So you want to balance that out. Water. There's a woman who's talking about the energy behind water. She's been interviewed by a bunch of people. I can't remember her name right now, but you could look up Dr. Emisaro and water. Okay, the food, what we're putting in our bodies are really important. This is a whole other video. I might actually get together with a nutritionist and do a video on this. So that'll be down the road. But we cannot, if we're constantly stressed, we're going to be eating things, we're going to be reaching for the potato chips, or the chocolate or the ice cream or whatever it is. And that is in usually direct response to the cortisol that's in our bodies. So, or the parasites sometimes too. So I didn't touch on parasite cleanses and heavy metals, but if you have a lot of heavy metals, from speaking from experience, in your body, there is a potential that you could have more nervous energy and it might heighten all of that. So being aware, if you have parasites, go to the doctor, get it checked out. Or if you have heavy metals, would be really great place to start if you're not sure where to start. Especially if you're waking up in the middle of the night having weird dreams, especially a lot of nightmares. If you feel paranoid, those are all good. They're not good signs, but they're pretty strong signs that you might have a lot of heavy metals and parasites in your body. It literally can wreak havoc on your nervous system, and that gut-brain connection, it like rewires it, and you aren't thinking clearly. It's going to cause brain frog. Ah, ribbit. You know what I mean. Getting towards the end of this video. All right, and sun. So the irony is we need the vitamin D, and the sun feels good for us. It helps to open up the pineal gland and all of that, but we also are getting blasted by the sun at times with some of these solar flares and photonic light that's coming in that is actually enhancing and waking up our central nervous system. Our body is adapting and responding to these electrical impulses that or currents of energy. I'm hearing galactic currents that are coming in. So we're not only bombarding ourselves with the worldly stuff, we're being bombarded with the natural. So it's not just the inorganic and the unnatural that we are creating around us. Dan Winters calls it electric smog, I think. Maybe that was from something else and I just heard him say it. But we're also getting it naturally. And so recognizing how we feel. Sometimes we may need less sun because we're already exhausted and the heat might make it worse. In my case, I love the heat. Some people swear by cold plunges. I've also heard and read that that can be good for your heart, and in some cases it can be bad for your heart. So I want to kind of give an overview that everything in moderation. And because we're having all of these activations and intense energies coming in, I want to end on the note about one more note about, oh, I already said humming. I didn't really go into that very much. For me, sounds are really big. The humming is really big. So you can tone with me, toning, not just hum, oming, right? It can feel really good. Mantras in the kids yoga. I also was certified to teach children's yoga. And we learned our little peace begins with me. And what they'll do is they'll say it out loud 5 times. Peace begins with me. Touching, pointing finger, middle finger, ring finger, pinky finger to thumb. You say it 5 times out loud. You whisper it 5 times, and then you say it silently 5 times. So it's 15 mantras. Out loud, whisper, silent as you do this. And you'd be amazed. I keep skipping the middle finger, but peace begins with me. Peace begins with me. Peace. Well, I should have said, let's do it together. Let's do it together. So you're going to say it out loud. Peace begins with me. Peace begins with me. Peace begins with 3. Peace begins with me. Peace begins with me. Whisper. Peace begins with me. 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 Silent. So I'm using this as an example. When you do that, I will do this with the children, and it's amazing. It's like instant calm down. So you might want to do that throughout your day. It doesn't have to be complicated. You don't have to go to a facilitator. You can all do these things on your own. Maybe you are a facilitator and just want something new. So the humming, I wrote down HemiSync. I didn't really go into that a lot. You can look up the Monroe Institute and who's the other guy? Silva method. That works great. Okay, I'm being called to talk a little bit about all of that. So I like to do the breathing and then just make sounds that come through. So this is where my light language started to come in. All of a sudden I would just go, oh, I don't know if you can hear this because the microphone might cancel it out, but I just have these weird noises that come through. In my car when I'm driving is my favorite place to do that. And, obviously by myself at home, but just let it kind of come through to vibrate whatever's going on that's stuck in your body. It might be that your throat is closed off or stuck. And that might help you open that up. So, okay, Kundalini. The last thing I'm going to end on for reals this time is if you are nervous, you've got all this energy going on, and it's making you feel on edge. Again, now may not be the time, like pay attention to your body. It may be more important to do breath work and meditation and walk in nature than to go to a Kundalini yoga class. So sometimes that Kundalini yoga is only going to make things worse, just as a heads up. Or opening Kundalini. Like you might be like, I'm going on a Kundalini retreat. I'm going to go on an ayahuasca retreat. Be ready. You might be ready, but you might also open up a can of worms that might require you to do a lot more work than you might have anticipated. So just as a fair, just kind of recognize that. It's not bad or wrong. You might want to expedite. You're like, I'm going to expedite this. Well, once you start that ball rolling, I don't necessarily feel like you can once you put the genie out, you can't get the genie back in usually. So just being aware of that, because I kind of am full throttle Betty. I'm like, yeah, let's go for it. And then I'm like, uh-oh, what did I get into? So recognize that once you're on that journey, be gentle with yourself sometimes. Allow yourself, it doesn't all have to happen now, right? So that's why some of these courses are a year long. Joe Dispenza, perfect example. I want to talk about that because that's right in alignment. So if you are having a Kundalini activation and you're feeling a lot of these things and you're just like, I am on edge all the time, then Kelly Marie, I don't know her last name. I follow her on YouTube. And by the way, everyone I follow on YouTube does not mean I watch the videos on a regular basis. I don't have a lot of time. So, but Kelly Marie, just look up Kelly Marie Kundalini and she'll probably be able to share. She's a really good resource for understanding what's going on. And again, by the way, everybody's names that I mention or share Doesn't mean I agree 100% with everything they teach, just like they may not agree with me. But I say take everything with a grain of salt. What works for you may not work for another person. What is your truth may not be true for someone else. So just because she has a lot of great teachings doesn't mean I'm 100% in alignment with everything that she is in 100% alignment with, or anyone that I connect in with, Dan Winters or any of them. Who's the other guy? Robert Edward Grant. Love listening, learning, gleaning, and sometimes I'm like, whoop, not my cup of tea. I don't agree with that, but that's okay. So this gives us different perspectives sometimes too, guys. Sometimes it's about having an experience. It's not even necessarily about, well, why did this happen? It's how did you feel when it was happening? What did it cause you to think of? Did you have an aha? When I was going through cranial sacral, somebody was there who worked with algorithms and supercomputers, and they figured it out because they were having an experience, and it opened up what they were questioning. So if you're going through a Kundalini activation, or you feel really nervy, or you're going through a lot of you're going through the dark night of the soul, sometimes this is just going to stir the pot. So be gentle on yourself, you know? So I kind of got distracted there, but with that having been said, oh, Joe Dispenza. So I really love Joe Dispenza, love all of his teachings. I have not read his book, but I did purchase it. A lot of books I've purchased that I haven't read. I would love to go to his workshop. I will say I've worked with several people who have had positive responses from going to his workshops. Almost everybody has that I've talked with. I have heard of and personally worked with people who have had, I'm not going to call them negative responses. It's a little bit like what I talked about with therapy, the therapy where you do the, can't remember what it's called. My friend told me about it. Anyways, sometimes when you dig up that wound, or you open your pineal gland, or you activate your Kundalini, and there's certain things that haven't been healed, or trauma, mostly fear, that oftentimes is going to come up. And our bodies will start twitching. We'll have electricity going through. We won't be able to stop moving. Our head might do this. I've seen that a lot. Sometimes I work with people, energy work, and they just start like, I don't know why my arm lifted. Our bodies are doing whatever our bodies need to do. But if we're not in a place where we can accept that and we can just allow it to flow, and we're resisting it, when we open that pineal gland, when we open up these parts of ourselves, out come with it the stuff that we've been not looking at, or we were afraid to look at, or we haven't shifted into our hearts enough to forgive some of the things that are coming up. I could go on and on. So I'm just saying, be gentle with yourself and don't overdo it. If you are doing all of these things with such an intensity, it's not about, like we say in yoga, it's not about the pose. It's not about getting into a pose and saying, I can do a handstand, I can do crow, whatever it is. It's the journey of moving, warming up, feeling and experiencing the yoking and the coming together in unification. It's not about that one thing. So it's not just about the Kundalini. Why would we want a Kundalini activation if it's going to make us crazy? So these are things to really consider on this journey. Not everybody is going to need to go through that experience. I could definitely do some more videos. So in love and light, guys, hang in there. I hope some of this has helped. Namaste.